so forth. So how do you actually navigate that?
Well, that's a good question. Thank you for asking. You're absolutely right. A lot of people come to me seeking an escort, but what they really need is some therapy, which works out because I have a therapy background, so I can offer them the therapeutic sex work experience. But it's the people that come to me for therapy that really want sex work that it's a little tricky. There's like this stigma about sex workers, right? So
right.
I find it always like surprises me even today. So a man will contact me for therapy, which is a different business name, everything's different. But what they really want is just to get laid or whatever. So it's like, well, why don't you just see an escort? And then they have this notion that escorts are cold, impersonal, not compassionate, and that the therapy would somehow be different than that. But it's actually not true. Most sex workers that like their job are very compassionate and loving and kind and will listen. And it's the therapists that have to have a very strong boundary, because we can't have transference, which is when one person, either the therapist or the client, starts to get emotional feelings for the other person. We can't have that. So therapists have to have very strong boundaries, and that often comes across as being cold and impersonal. And so I find it funny that there's that stigma out there. But with the therapy, I started doing that about 2 years after I became a sex worker, just because I had a client tell me about it. And so I looked into it and I became certified, and it helps people. It's mostly really good for people who have a lot of traumatic experiences and have shut down the ability to feel pleasure from being touched, which happens if, for example, you're a veteran who's seen a lot of wartime deployment or something. So you're in the survival mode where you just don't feel, because that's how you have to be. Well, now you come back into society and you want to have intimate relations with your wife, but you just can't feel anything. It's not their fault. That's how they had to be to survive. And so we just kind of rewire the mind body to feel pleasure from being touched again, and to feel safe and trusting and all that.
Okay, awesome. Now, I'm just curious. So did you actually have to go to school to be a sex therapist? So what actually, you say you're certified, so I guess you're licensed. So how did you actually get certified to become a sex therapist?
I went to a training program, and it was in Philadelphia. And so
that's where we're from.
Oh, hey, I love Philly. I go to Philly like once or twice a year. I really love Philly. It's a cool city. Yeah, so surrogate partner therapy, which is the type of therapy that I'm certified in. It was developed in the 60s by Masters and Johnson, who kind of pioneered sex therapy. And it involves a triadic model. So there's like a mental health clinician who will help the client process all the feelings that are going to come up through being touched in a loving way. And then there's me. So I don't really do the mental health part. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not licensed to practice that kind of therapy, but I am certified to practice the touch therapy.
Okay. What consists of that as far as the touch therapy? Is like physical touch or just hovering?
Oh yeah, it's physical touch. So a lot of surrogate partner therapists do it differently, but the way I do it is there's 3 levels, and the first level is non-sexual. It's only sensual. So we're just learning to feel pleasure from being touched. And what it looks like is the client and I will take turns. We'll set a timer for like 10 or 20 minutes, and we'll take turns just laying there receiving touch. And whoever is doing the touching is touching that person for their own pleasure. Whoever is receiving the touch is receiving the touch for their own pleasure. And it's interesting because most people have never done that. Most people have never held their partner's hand and just like rubbed their face and just felt how good that feels. And so that's what we do in level 1. And then it usually winds up with like this mind-blowing like epiphany for the client. They have like this whole transformation thing, and it's really cool to watch. And then in level 2, we introduce sexual energy. We talk about tantra and kundalini, and how to be responsible with your own sexual energy. Yep. And then level 3, we'll do practice. If that, most people don't need level 3. I only do that really with like late life virgins, people who really need to experience that.
Okay.
So most people that come in, we do level 1 and level 2, and that's good enough for them.
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, to me, that sounds more like foreplay. The first one, the level 1, just laying there touching and caressing. So it sounds tricky because I know you said you don't do the psychology part of it, but it seems like that part is more mental than it is the actually physical, because you have to get past the mental to get to the physical. It's like it's a block there, whatever it is mental, like he was talking about with the veterans. It's a mental block that they have, not necessarily physical.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. That is definitely something that comes up often. So usually the client will have to see a mental health clinician for an intake, and then first before they see me. Mm-hmm. And then also I like to incorporate energy work like Reiki and stuff, just because if I'm already touching somebody, I might as well try to move their energy and clear their blocks and stuff. But that's why it's a triadic model. A lot of it, the magic happens between talking to somebody and then having the touch. Yeah.
Okay, that will get a little personal if you don't mind.
Sure, go for it.
Okay, because I'm also into energy work. I'm next month I'm going to start my Reiki class. Ooh. So it's like really interesting because for me, one of my goals is to experience an orgasm without touching, without actually physical penetration, because I know that's a mental thing, and it's just being able to have interaction with your partner on a mental level, and just being able to touch them energetically to be able to have that. Now, do you teach that as well? Do you help people with that, or it's just merely someone that has a blockage?
I can definitely help people with that and teach people that. It's more advanced, it's a lot more advanced. Yeah. I've experienced that. I know how to do that and give that experience. Awesome. Yeah, for sure. People really have to be dialed in. They have to be really, dialed into their own energetic flow and connected with their partner. I'm trying to think of how many times that's happened to me in a professional setting. Maybe like I can count on one hand, maybe.
Wow. Yeah, that's rare.
Yeah. Have you ever had that happen to you?
I had it one time, but I didn't know, like I wasn't really into it then. I had no clue what I was doing. It's like it was just a connection with that person. And, we were laying there, whatever, and not really touching each other, but you can feel the energy was so strong. And she experienced it more so than I did. I had like maybe a little bit of pre-cum, but not the full actual release. Yeah. All right, but I'm going to ask so many questions. Mark, do you have any questions? Or?
No, I mean, the reason I'm listening, you basically asking every question I want to ask. So far I don't have any, because pretty much the ones I was going to ask you already beat me to it. So I'm going to just continue to listen, and when one pops up that, I feel like I need to learn a little bit more, and then I'm going to ask it. But so far, everything she's saying, she's explaining to where I get it. And the questions you ask, basically, like I said, you asking the ones I wanted to ask. So I'm going to keep listening. I'm going to chime in, just not yet. That's all.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. So now, the other thing that I'm kind of interested in, I was reading about Kundalini this morning. Okay. So I found it interesting because from what I understood is that the Kundalini energy, one way of reaching that is not actually engaging in sex and releasing it that way. Yes. So you release it, you help them release it, but then like the whole point of reaching your Kundalini is not to use it in a sexual experience. How do you navigate that? Okay,
let's talk about that. Sorry, I'm sniffling.
No, you're fine. You're good.
The Kundalini energy is the serpent energy that's inside of us that originates in the sacral chakra in our genital area.
Yes.
And when we're practicing sex magic or Kundalini yoga or Tantra or any of that energetic stuff, we call upon that energy because it's so powerful.
Yes.
It is advisable to become familiar with your own Kundalini energy before integrating that with anybody else's Kundalini energy, because the effects of those two things mixing are very intense. Right.
Yes.
So the way I recommend that, and I do this with my clients, right? When we switch from level 1 to level 2, we'll have a Kundalini awakening ritual. And I have them visualize all their chakras, and I have them visualize a fire in their sacral chakra, their genital area. And then I have them try to pull that fire up, see how high we can get it. And usually, this is a sneaky way I find out where their blocks are. Usually their blocks are in their hearts or their stomach, where the emotion and love and all those strong things are. And they can only get it so high up. And I'm like, okay, well, we need to work on your this chakra, that chakra, whatever. But once we've done that, and I tell them to practice, and once they can get it all the way up, out the top of our head, then we can work with integrating that with somebody else's.
Okay.
It's just super intense. And it's like what you were touching on before with giving people energetic orgasms.
Right.
If you and your partner's sexual energy is so entwined that you are able to manipulate it by manipulating your own, it's like two snakes dancing, right? And that's kind of how I describe it. And if you can feel your partner's sexual energy and you can feel your sexual energy, and then you can dance together with that is like the key of Tantra and all of those Eastern philosophies of sex. Right? It leads to like super mind-blowing orgasms. The male can achieve multiple orgasms. They can have multiple energetic orgasms culminating in a physical biological release.
Yes.
Or they can hold on to their ejaculation and store it up and like edge with it.
Edge it, yes.
Yeah. And it's just like the most intense orgasms. That's what the men tell me. And
awesome.
With me, I use it to heal my clients, if I have their permission. And usually they say yes, because what else are they going to say? It sounds fun and kinky, right?
Right.
I'll use my Kundalini energy if I'm energetically healthy that day to heal theirs and remove their blocks and stuff like that. Right. And they always tell me, I feel a lot better. Well, of course they do. They just got off. But
exactly. That was just an extra piece of it.
Yeah, that's just a little extra something.
Now, do you do that in person only, or do you do that by Zoom also? Because I think that would be kind of hard not hard, but challenging to do it if the person is in a different location.
I've tried to do it on Zoom. I've done it on Zoom a couple times. It's hard because the clients want to please me. There's like this power dynamic. So they will say whatever they think I want them to say.
Right.
So if I'm like, how does your heart chakra feel? They're like, it's bursting. It's like, really, is it? In person, I can tell, I can feel it. But on Zoom, I can't. And so does it work? Kind of. It's better than nothing. It's more of a guide.
Now, is it?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Now, is it possible? I don't know if I'm just tripping or whatever, but there are certain women, and I'm sure this may be the same with women too for men, but I could feel like their sexual energy. Now, could that just be somebody that's Kundalini energy is just out of control, and that's what I'm feeling? If that makes sense?
I know what you're asking me.
Okay.
There's a lot of people that they have not set up a container for their sexual energy. And this is one of the first things I have people do. Because if you come in to see me and you are not even aware of your sexual energy, and then we do these exercises and now you are hyper aware of your sexual energy, it needs to be in a container. And there's a lot of people walking around that they don't have a container for their sexual energy. It's going everywhere. Yeah. And maybe it's working for them. People can use that to their advantage. They can use it in a way to manipulate others, to seduce them, to whatever it is they're doing. Is it healthy? It'll deplete us. It'll usually lead to like boundary crossing, which could really cause drama. It's more healthy to have a container for your sexual energy so that you can let it out when you want to and keep it in when you want to. And it's not just like,
Okay, so that leads me to my next question. This is kind of going into your other practice that you do as far as the escort. Now, Is it somebody that does that type of work? Could it be that possibly that their energy is just out of control and they don't know exactly what it is, so they feel as okay, well, maybe I just need to be in the film industry or escort?
Mm-hmm.
Because I was always curious as far as how does somebody get into that? And the stereotype is they come from a broken home, they either been abused as a child, drug and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
I don't be ignorant, but do somebody really sit up and be like, well, I want to be a porn star when I get older or escort? So what is it that kind of lead them into that field?
Okay.
I know it's a loaded question.
No, you're good. I'm going to start with the first question because it's easier to answer, and it was like a yes/no. Yes, many escorts and porn stars have sexual energy all over the place that they haven't been able to control or they're not aware of or whatever. That's how I was when I first started. I was just like so horny all the time. Whatever. I might as well be getting paid because I'm being an Uber slut. Okay. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are like that. Strippers and stuff, you know.
Right.
I'm not whore shaming. I'm just speaking from experience.
Right.
Now, how do people get into it? I always wanted to be an escort ever since I was like 12. Before I even realized I could get paid to have sex, I wanted to get paid to have sex, right? That's not everybody. I think a lot of people, the ones I've talked to, the escorts I've talked to, they either came into it because of the first thing we talked about. They were like super horny and they might as well get paid if they're going to be Uber sluts. Or they don't have any other way to make money. They don't have the self-confidence to do anything else, you know, which is not, I'm not trying to shame anybody. This happens from being raised, being told you're never going to be good enough. All you are good at is sucking dick, whatever. People get these messages.
Right.
They think that's the truth.
Yeah.
So then they go into the adult industry, and from what I've heard, those are the people that end up getting hurt and getting trafficked and getting abused because they are already stuck in this shame cycle of abuse and they're perpetuating it. And so if we come in from a place of I just want to share love, I just want to make people feel good, I'm already really good at this, I haven't had any problems with that. And the girls that I've mentored that they come in with that attitude haven't had any problems. It's the girls that come in from a lifetime of abuse that have problems. And it's hard to get people, you probably experienced this yourself. It's hard to get people out of the pattern of abuse. It's like impossible if you don't want to be out of it.
So I did a podcast on self-love not too long ago, and I was transparent with my life as far as there was a point when I was addicted to porn, and I was in Germany. In Europe, you know, they got the red light district and everything over there. So, and I call it high sex drive. I didn't even know anything about Kundalini energy and stuff like that. I just thought I had a very, very high sex drive. And it was challenging to, you know, stop it and, you know, try to move on from it. So I can definitely identify with that. But I just find it interesting. So you said at 12, was it something that you saw, or like how at 12 you knew about the escort industry?
I didn't know anything about the escort industry. I just knew, I feel like I had a sexual awakening. I can still remember it. You know, I felt something I never felt before in my body. I knew it was powerful. I knew that it was mine. And I just started exploring it on my own. I really didn't have, I grew up in the middle of like nowhere, Ohio. There wasn't a lot. So I read what I could, but there was nothing explaining any of that stuff to me. I had to learn on my own. There's no other way to describe it except for like a spiritual calling.
Right.
And that, I don't think that's normal, but I think it happens often.
I didn't want to say anything. I was like, okay, that's different. That's the new one for me.
Well, I'm in a therapy group with sex workers who are also therapists. And most of those women have told me that they've experienced the same thing, that it was like a spiritual calling to become an escort.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay.
Mark has a question.
I'm sorry, man. So I'm going to go backwards a little bit. So Matt might have already asked this. You might even already explain this, but I'm going to just throw it out there. just to have more of a clear understanding. On the therapy part of it, like you said, these clients come in. Now, the question I'm asking is, that's to help them to open up, to explore something that they holding inside, and how is that benefiting their partner? Is it to make them comfortable so they can experience that with their partner? And if they don't, would that leave the partner kind of not on the same level as them? So in other words, it's like a two-part question. First, the therapy part is to help them open up and explore and understand their energy on that level. And the second part is, how would that help their partner if the partner is not on that same level as them once they open that up and get, I guess, comfortable or explore that? How would that benefit the partner they with? If that makes sense.
Those are really good questions. Yes, that makes total sense. And it's going to be a long answer, so I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Ramble a little.
I tried to cut it, make it short, but yeah.
Oh, you did great, and those are great questions. Okay, so the first question, the clients that come to me for therapy, they either have a partner, they're either married in a relationship or whatever, or they don't. And if they have a partner or if they don't have a partner, we change the program depending on that. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So let's say they don't have a partner. They usually come in because something's not working right. Like they're not getting hard, or they're not ejaculating, or they can't penetrate. That's the top three usually.
Mm-hmm.
And so that most 9 times out of 10 leads back to some trauma, abandonment stuff where they just don't trust. They can't trust to release. They can't trust to penetrate. Whatever. I'm making this very basic. Sorry.
No worries. No worries. Yeah.
So that's why men come in. It's funny, they'll have all this background and they'll tell me they have no trauma. And then we do the thorough intake and it's like, oh my gosh, you actually have quite a lot of trauma. But they just kind of dismiss it. But when their penis isn't working, then it's a problem. Okay. So that's how that works. But if they have a partner, I do try to get the partner in just to hear the partner's side of the story, see what's going on with the partner. A lot of times, and I don't want to sound like I'm women bashing, but this is what happens. A lot of times the wife or the girlfriend will be like, you have a problem and you got to fix it and I'm not going to deal with it. Okay. This is your problem. That's what they tell the men.
Yep.
And come in, we do the intake, we do this and that, we hear what's going on. And a lot of times the woman's the one that needs a therapy. Like, yeah, the man needs therapy too, because they're living with this crazy, emotionally abusive woman. But the woman also needs some therapy, but they refuse to come in. So what we can do with the man is like, okay, well, this is how it's going to be, dude. We will teach you these exercises and you can take them home and do them with your partner and you will become the catalyst for healing for her.
Right.
So then we empower the man through his own therapy to become the catalyst to heal his partner.
Okay, now I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because trauma to me is a broad question. When you say trauma, are you speaking of somebody that's been like abused as far as sexually abused? Because at one point, I felt as though I may have experienced trauma, and I thought I had an issue when I was a young adult. So when you say trauma, like what level of trauma are we speaking on?
That's a good question. And everybody's trauma is impactful. And even though it seems different, it's all kind of the same in a way. Like, you could be sexually abused and it affects you the same way that somebody who went and saw mass murder is affected, So trauma, here's some examples of the trauma that my clients come in with. Horribly disfigured as a child due to neglect. They have wives cuckolding them and gaslighting them. Their mother dropped them off at a gas station when they were 14 and never came back. This is all like serious traumatic events. Then I have my vets who were in Gulf War, Afghanistan, etc., and they've seen some shit there. But it could also just be as basic as like my girlfriend told me I had a small penis and I've never been able to get over it. One of my last clients, that was his deal. Like, he had a girlfriend who was actually not a real girlfriend. She was just like this promiscuous woman who was hooking up with him. She told him he had a small penis, and from that day forward, he couldn't have sex with anybody.
Wow.
So that one little phrase affected him so deeply on the same level as all these other horrible things affected the other clients so deeply. And that's what I mean when I say trauma is kind of looks the same on a certain level.
Okay.
And we had to get to the point where he was standing naked in front of me. We were doing the mirror exercise where we get naked and we talk about our body in front of another person, which most people like hate to do, and they make this big thing out of it, but it's really not that bad once we've done it. And I was like, dude, your penis is fine. It is actually a normal penis. And he wouldn't believe me. I'm like, bro.
He's like, you just saying that.
I'm like, bro, I have literally seen hundreds of them and I have no reason to lie to you.
Okay. So that leads me to my next question. So as far as for a woman, because I've actually experienced women that couldn't orgasm, and some would say, well, it's not me, it's you. I was always under the impression sometimes it was more so the woman than it was me. Because I've been with women and they experienced it, so it can't be me. So speaking for a woman, how would a woman be able to, how would you treat a woman?
It's a very good question. And a side note to that is one of the first people I ever helped sexually, I was about 15 or 16, and it was a woman, and I was teaching her how to have an orgasm. So this hits home. So I think with women, we have two things. One is that they feel pain from sex, and it's an actual medical disorder. Like they either have intense pain, or they can't even open up their cervical canal enough to allow the penis to enter, stuff like that. And that would obviously mean that they couldn't have an orgasm, I suppose. They could have a clitoral orgasm. But a lot of the times when women can't orgasm, it's like in their head, right? Mm-hmm. It's a inability to let go of control.
Right.
They have to be in control. And when you have an orgasm, you are not in control. You're letting somebody else kind of make you feel a certain way, and you have to let go in order to experience the orgasm. So I think that's what it comes down to a lot of times, is the woman just can't let go of the control.
So it could be a combination of both?
It could definitely be a combination of both, especially if they have sexual abuse in their past.
I mean, as far as the man, it could be an issue with him as well.
Oh, well, it could be an issue with the man, like he doesn't have the skills necessary and give a woman an orgasm. So my question is, can they make themselves have an orgasm? Can the woman masturbate to have an orgasm? And if the answer is no, then we know which path to go down. And if the answer is yes, then we can work on those options. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does, but maybe this sounds like a crazy question, but I would think it's different as far as a woman making herself have an orgasm than a man, because if I'm not mistaken, they're using maybe a toy or their hands, and it's different. A man is actually using, his penis to do it. So how is that the same?
Okay, well, let's break down the kinds of orgasms that women can have, right? We can have a clitoral orgasm from having our clitoris stimulated by a finger or a vibrator or a tongue or the tip of a penis. And then we can have a cervical orgasm, which is what women have when they're being penetrated deeply and the penis is rubbing up against the inside of our cervix. And that's a totally different orgasm. And then we can have anal orgasms, and we can have energetic orgasms.
Yes.
Right? So cervical orgasms are harder to achieve. Women have to be really in touch with their body to be able to achieve that kind of orgasm. We have to be able to feel the inside of our cervix. I don't have any hard numbers, but I feel like less than half women who have sex know how to have those kind of orgasms, have had those kind of orgasms, recognize that that's what it is. A lot of the orgasms women have are the clitoral kind, from having our clitoris stimulated.
Right.
And that a man can mimic what a woman does. A woman will use her hand or a tool, like you were talking about, and a man can use his hand or his tongue or a vibrator.
Right.
So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
No, it did perfectly. Thank you. So that comes to the infamous question: does size matter? No, I'm just kidding.
Does size matter? I feel like size matters a little bit, but not as much as society makes it seem like it matters.
Okay.
If a penis is too big, it hurts me.
Right.
You know, and if it's too small, well, we can do other stuff with it, but we might not be able to have a cervical orgasm because it just won't reach the parts that need stimulated. But there's so much shame around penis size. What's up with that? Can you guys illuminate me on that?
Well, I think it depends on, for me, if the woman actually had somebody that was well endowed. So I can't speak for Mark, but I can see some men, like if you know you're average and you're not that, and just to have in the back of your mind, like, well, this dude was hung like a horse and he made her feel a certain type of way. Whatever I try to do, she ain't gonna feel the same. So it kind of make you feel a little bit inadequate. So it's like you're in competition, especially if the female is always throwing in your face, well, so-and-so was hung like this and he made me feel like that. Mm-hmm. And you look down like, damn, I ain't been close to that. So it's always going to be in the back of your mind, like, I can't perform even close to what he did. So for me, that would make me feel as though, okay, I got to get a pump or something, or take some pills to try to get even close to what, she experienced before. I don't know if that answered the question, but...
It did, and it brings me back to that whole, the woman being emotionally abusive and weaponizing sex thing. It's like, why are you talking about your past lover's dick size to your current man? Why is that even a thing? Obviously, she has some inadequacy in herself to be like, well, that's not the only way I can be pleased. Well, that's bullshit. Like we talked about earlier, energetic sexual energy and stuff, that's what really matters. That's the shit that counts. Hello. If you can connect, you know what I'm saying? If you can connect with your partner, then how big your penis is just doesn't really fucking matter.
Exactly.
The best sex I've had were with men with just average size penises, but we have this connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think porn kind of does that too, because most of the porn stars on there are hung. So what do we do when we're young? A lot of people watching, especially men, so they feel as though, well, damn, I can't compete with that. So that kind of makes them feel as though they're inadequate, and that's what women want.
That's such bullshit. Women want connection. Women want to feel loved and honored and heard and seen and all that other stuff. We don't need to be pounded by a thick ass cock all the time. It's if a woman thinks that's what she needs, maybe she needs to do some work on herself.
No, I agree. Okay, now I have one for you. When I was in Canada, I befriended she was an escort. So I was just curious. I asked her a question. I said, do y'all actually orgasm when you, when y'all have different clients or whatever? And she was like, sometimes, but we try our best not to. It's all about him and not us. And I said, so how do you disconnect? Do you disconnect? And she's like, I'm just going to be honest. A lot of times you have to go to a dark place and you have to be cold because you don't want that emotional attachment and energetic attachment. So you have to be like, for her, she said she had to go cold. And that's how she was able to do it, to not connect with him.
Interesting.
So how did you approach it? And is that true?
I feel like I am fundamentally the opposite of that. And so everything that she said is valid, definitely. But I definitely have orgasms with my client, and I don't get emotionally attached when I have an orgasm. Most of the clients want to know they're pleasing a woman. So maybe we have a different clientele. Yeah. Maybe her clientele, it's all about them and they don't give a shit. But most of my clients, almost all of them, they want to know that they're pleasing me.
Right.
That's part of it. That's part of the whole ego thing. Like they can jerk off and get an orgasm, but they want to please a woman. And so I feel like it's important for me to have an orgasm with every client if that's what we're doing. If I'm just pleasing them and we know that's what it's about, then no, I don't need to have an orgasm. That's fine. But most of the time they want me to. And so how do I do that? I go to a light place. I don't go to a dark place. I go to a place of love and gratitude. And I know this is going to sound freaking woohoo, but I go to gratitude. I'm like, thank you, God. Thank you for giving me this body and this mind and this experience. And once I start thanking God for all the things that are wonderful in my life, it's easy to have an orgasm, even if the person I'm with is not very attractive. I don't get emotionally attached to people I have sex with. That's why I'm successful in this business.
Yeah, I could imagine so.
Yeah,
I say you're different.
What'd you say, Mike?
I said I can imagine after a while, you, in a sense, you do become numb, and I hate to say it becomes a job, but it is a job in a sense to where you can get attached because that causes conflict and compromise with what you're doing, which is your profession, correct? So in any job you do, where you're dealing with, I say customers, you have to be able to know how not to connect with them because that will become conflict of interest. So it has to become to the point where, in a sense, kind of like Matt said, not be cold, but just know that this is my job. I'm doing it to, to help the person, the client, and by the end of the day, that's all it is. Because to me, personally, I can feel like at some point you would get a connection with one of the clients.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to step back and go, wait a minute, no, I'm not doing this. Because to me, it seems like you might come across someone that will have that connective energy with you.
Right.
And where you have to go, pause and be like, wait a minute, nope, this is just my job. I'm not going to go there.
Yeah.
So to me, that's tremendous to be able to do that and not connect with anybody.
Yeah.
So it would seem like it's a mental thing, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. 100%. 100%. And yeah, you're right. There are those clients that I get a little, I try not to, but it's hard not to because we just have such a good connection. But you're right. At the end of the day, it's a job. So
now, I don't know if Matt asked you this already, but do you recommend that they bring in their partner, or is it solely just that person because they're the one that needs more to work? Or do you ever have it to where if it's a guy, the woman wants to come to see what is helping them, to have a better understanding of? Because, for example, if I'm telling my significant other, hey, I need a therapist, I'm going to go get this taken care of so we can enjoy, and she'd be like, well, I need to come and see because I don't agree with this. Do you recommend they do that, or you just tell them, just have them explain it to her as best as possible?
Oh, absolutely. I always welcome the partner to come in because it's definitely more beneficial if the client has a partner, for the partner to know what we're doing so they can practice at home, because really that's what it's about. It's not about my client establishing a connection with me. Yeah, with this partner, yeah. But most of the time, the partner does not want to. They're fine. There's nothing wrong with them. This is the man's problem. Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, well.
Let me ask you this. This is more of a scientific part of it, because, as you get older, and some men have the ED, the erectile dysfunctional. Now, I've been told sometimes it could be more mental because you're blocking and thinking that you can't stay erect long enough, or sometimes they say it's just the lack of blood flow, your libido is low, your testosterone is low. When it comes to that, if you ever had a client come in, do you handle that, or you pretty much tell them, go get a doctor to see if it's your testosterone, your libido is low, or is it more a mental thing?
That's a good question. So by the time men come to see me for their erectile dysfunction, they've already exhausted all those other things. Because they want the quick fix. They want it to just be something they can take a pill for,
Right.
And if the doctor's like, you're fine, man, like everything's fine, it's in your head, then they come to see me.
They see you, okay. And that usually helps them at that point?
It's a mental thing. They're usually already self-defeating. Like they're going into a situation saying, I'm not going to get hard. So you go into it like that. So we do some work on their subconscious. We do some work on their affirmations, and then we do the sensate focus exercises like I was describing before, because sometimes they just aren't feeling the pleasure and they think it's all about their dick. And that's what it is. A lot of the time men are like, it's all about my penis. I'm like, actually you have a whole body. Your skin is your largest organ, excuse me, and it can feel pleasure all over. And if you start to invite the pleasure you feel on your body into your body, your penis will react the way you want it to without you having to think about it.
Right.
Like you said, it's foreplay.
All right, so Olivia, this was a while back, but one of the viewers had a question, and she asked, "Do you work with women as well, or just men?"
Definitely, I work with women in sex work. I work with women in therapy. Yes, I love working with women.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm trying to ask this question without it being too personal.
Okay.
So it's kind of going back to the question Mark asked as far as like making a connection with somebody. Have you ever encountered an situation to where you did connect, and when you was back with your husband, you was more so reverting back to that other experience you had than with your husband?
I'm not going to say no. Excuse me. I feel like in my 10 years of being a sex worker, I've definitely had some hot sex, and sometimes those experiences can slip into my personal life because they're just so intensely erotic. I can't think of them off the top of my head. And a lot of times I feel like that's just because I had excess sexual energy that needed to be bled off. Because please forgive me if I assume incorrectly, but I'm assuming that you have had intense sexual experiences yourself, and it just like, leaves you. You're like, oh no, and you don't know what to do with it. And then like, you know, and it lasts for a couple of days. And yeah, I've definitely had those. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Okay, I'm gonna piggyback off of what Matt just asked about that. Now, I don't know if this is in your field if you deal with anybody like that, or would you recommend it? As far like when Matt was saying earlier in the show about foreplay, would you ever recommend, or is it healthy to have role play? Is that part of therapy to have role play with your, to kind of get the person comfortable? And sometimes it may spice it up. I feel like that's more foreplay to make it more interesting. But then some say, why would you use fantasy of somebody else?
It's a mental stimulation. Right.
Yeah. But I mean, what I mean is, would that be something you would recommend, or that's not, because you're kind of bringing somebody else into the equation as far as getting stimulated with your partner?
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No. That was it. I just want to make sure that made sense the way I was asking it, but
it absolutely makes sense. Absolutely. Okay. And it's quite a big question, so I'll try to answer it as best as I can. Yeah, in sex work, role play comes in for sure. It's not a service I do a lot of. I don't advertise it as a service that I offer. But there's definitely people who do, and it's a whole thing. So, yes, for sex work. For therapy, it shows up in a different way. Because the therapy is I'm not sexualizing myself. I'm not saying I am your sexy sex therapist and we're going to have hot sex. That's sex work, role play. What I'm doing in therapy is more like, okay, let's pretend I am a girl you're on a date with, and we're going to have a conversation, or let's pretend you've gotten that woman home, and now what do we do? How do you engage? How do you start? That's the kind of role play we do in therapy.
Okay, all right.
Because obviously I'm not their date or whatever, but we need to communicate. A lot of these people in therapy, they are not very good at communicating. I know that might come as a shock to you. So we need to practice it.
All right, Olivia, what is a courtesan?
A courtesan? It's a French word for a prostitute who favors clients that are on the more affluent side and who is educated in the arts and culture, and is somebody who you can take out to like a fancy gala where you have to keep up appearances and stuff. Not to whore shame. There's different kinds of escorts, right? There's escorts you would take to meet your family, and then there's escorts that you definitely would not. Or your business associates. I've met my clients' business associates. We've gone to events with them. I can hold a conversation with them, and we can go to the art openings and talk about the art, or we can do whatever, because that's my background.
Okay.
It doesn't make me better than anybody else. That's just how I market myself, because that's what I'm most comfortable as.
Okay. And then what is a madam?
So a madam is an agent. If you go to a brothel in Nevada, there's a madam. She's the madam of the house, right? And she's the one who takes care of the girls and the house and the clients, and she's kind of in charge. I don't have a physical brothel anymore, but I am still an agent for other escorts. So I'm still calling myself a madam. Now, if you want to get down to semantics and nitty gritty, a madam and a pimp are the same thing.
I was just about to say it sounds like a pimp.
And it ain't easy. And sometimes I feel like I want to pimp slap those girls.
Okay. Now, like I said, I was more interested in the therapist side of it. Because like when we was talking about the Kundalini energy and stuff like that, like I'm really, really into that.
Right on.
So you seem really well versed. Do you choose one over the other as far as the therapist opposed to the escort? Because you sound like, to me, you're not saying that the other one was not, but you'd be more beneficial with the therapist than the escort, as escort.
Honestly, I feel more authentic, and I feel like I'm helping more people as an escort than I do as a therapist. Because when clients come to me as a therapist, they've already got a shield up, and they're already telling me lies. You know, like, are you addicted to porn? No, I'm not addicted to porn. I only use it 3 times a week for an hour. You know, it's like,
you don't want to seem like a perv.
What's that? Yeah, exactly. They come in and there's always a story, and it takes me 3 or 4 sessions to like get down to the real thing, and it's frustrating at times. And I feel like as an escort with a therapeutic background where I can offer compassion and healing, I do more good in the world, and I'm more authentic.
Wow, that's interesting. Because I'm thinking probably with couples, like married couples and significant others, the therapist side would be more beneficial because they can get into energetic orgasms and stuff. And then the escort, I don't know, maybe it is a lot of married people, I don't know, but.
Well, you're right. There is that possibility in the therapy side to unlock a couple's inner erotic energies and all that stuff. But does that happen a lot? No. It doesn't happen to me a lot. It doesn't come to me a lot. Most of the times, like I said before, the man's to see me because his wife has had enough and she doesn't want involved and all this, and there's just drama. Right. And if we have couples in, then they're shit talking each other, and it's just like this dramatic baggage unloading session. But when I work with couples as an escort, it's hot, you know, and they're like into it, and it's like this whole thing. So
I have a question. Now, on this, when you have these clients, are these clients that come once and that's it, or do they do repeated sessions? Do you require that, or is it one time you should be helped and then that's it? Or do you have, like, I guess you would say in a sense like a regular client that comes where it's a normal once a month kind of thing? How does that work as far as when you deal with your clients? Is it one and done, or is it continual session?
Oh, that's a good question. Are you talking about with the therapy or with the?
Yeah, or either or. Well, more or less the therapy, yeah. Because I get the escort part probably would be.
Yeah, well, with the escort part, I have mostly regulars, and I've had them for years. For the therapy part, it's a program. It takes time to work.
To get to that.
Yeah, but that being said, many of them come for only one session and then they disappear for whatever reason. Maybe they weren't ready, we're getting too close to home, it's too expensive, I don't know. Okay. Whatever reason. But it works better when they come
to continue on, you know you're actually helping them. It's a process, right?
Yeah, it's a process for sure. It's easy for our minds to rationalize things and be like, oh, that was then, it doesn't matter, it's not bothering me now. That's easy. But our body holds on to all that stuff.
Yes.
And it takes time for our body to let go of it.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so as far as the energetic or the Kundalini, do you offer that on your website? Because I didn't see it on your website.
I don't talk too much about the sex magic and the erotic energy stuff on my website. Right. I kind of dip into it a little bit. Maybe I should talk about it more. Yeah, I just kind of keep it as my little secret.
Well, that's not a secret now.
Secret's out. Partially because I don't want to be culturally appropriating. I mean, that's the main reason. Is I am obviously not an Eastern person. Right. I'm from Ohio, right? I don't want to talk about something I really don't know that much about.
That much, I got you.
Practicing it, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to ask you, what is sex magic? I keep hearing about it, but it's never been explained. people always say it, but they don't go in detail.
Excuse me. I feel like for me, sex magic is something that you can practice on your own, and I advise that you practice it on your own before practicing it with somebody else. And so, very basically, my definition of sex magic is that, you know, when you're having an orgasm and you're building up energy and then you release that energy, if you release that energy with an intention behind it, that's sex magic. So, for example,
gotcha.
Okay, and then you can build on that and
Got it.
go all the way. But if I'm masturbating by myself and I'm going to have an orgasm and I want to use sex magic because I need to make like $1,000 like tomorrow or something, and that's my intention, I'm just putting it out there into the universe with this extra energy that I built up in my orgasm. Sex magic. Or if I'm working with a client, like I was talking about earlier, healing them and all that stuff, that's sex magic.
Okay. So one of the viewers asked, do you have a payment plan or financial help for those that need it, like a regular business?
Do I have a payment plan? Not usually, but I'm willing to negotiate and talk about it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Now, I have one more question. It's going to go back to what you stated a couple of minutes ago when Matt asked about which would you prefer to do. Now, on that same note, I'm going to kind of ask the same question in a different light. Have you ever come across clients where you felt like they may need more therapy than maybe not just an escort, or vice versa?
That's definitely happens all the time. All the time. And it's easier to give them what they need if they come to me as an escort because they're already coming to me with this vulnerability.
Right.
And I mean, guys, it's amazing. They will tell sex workers everything. They'll tell sex workers stuff they've never even told their wives.
Right. That's what I was thinking. I was wondering how that worked.
And then when they come in for therapy, they're already closed up. They're already like, I'm only going to tell you a little bit at a time, you know.
Right. Okay.
I don't know why that is.
So isn't the job kind of dangerous?
It can be very dangerous, yes. It can be very dangerous.
Well,
There's some horror stories.
So it's not like the at the strip club where you got the bouncer and stuff. You don't have any protection with you. It's just by yourself.
Yes, so it's recommended that if you're working as an escort, you have a buddy that you text and that knows where you are. I'm going here at this time and I'll be done at this time, and there's this communication thing, and if they don't hear from you, they know where you're at and all that stuff. That's part of what I offer in my Madam Agent agreement. But a lot of it, you just have to have good screening. As an escort, you really need to screen your clients. You can't just let anybody in.
Right.
A lot of people are out there to hurt you, for sure.
Okay. I got one. Now, this one is going to be it's not a tough question. I just want you to give me a better perspective for myself. Now, if you say it to the viewers, like if I'm asking you, how would you refer to someone like you need a sex therapist? Or, you know, if a guy just want to escort, or if him and his wife or girlfriend is having issues, how would you say this is symptoms where I think you would probably benefit from a sex therapist? How would you present that for a couple that's out here that might be looking at this right now and they may have issues or whatever? How would you refer to them and say, look, this is why I think you should have a sex therapist? In other words, what would be the reason for me to say I need a sex therapist? Now, I know individually we all might need to know that on our own, but for your profession, how would you recommend somebody that feel like that be the one to help them? If that's easy to answer, I don't know, probably not.
Like, for example, if I'm sitting on an airplane and I'm sitting next to a couple and they ask me what I do and I tell them what I do, and then like that kind of thing. Like
that, or they come to you and they just talk in a general conversation, and you be like, you know what, you can use a sex therapist because from what you're saying, this is probably might help you. Like, how do you determine, other than them coming in on their selves, do you ever do that? Like, present that to someone, or you just let them come to you? Like, if you're outside looking in.
I understand what you're asking me. Thank you. That's a good question. A lot of times I'll hear men say that they're in a sexless marriage or something like that. Right. And when I hear that, then that's a cue to me to be like, are you guys interested in working on that? Right. And then with the women, I'll hear them shit talking about their husband, you know, he doesn't want to do this or he can't do that or this and that. The other thing is like, well, we can work on it. I have a program, you know, for couples, and it teaches you exercises. I feel like most people, when they're telling me something about them, they don't want to hear my advice unless they're asking for it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I always try to get consent. It's like, would you like some feedback, or would you just want me to listen? You know?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and the reason why I came up, it just popped in my mind because I'm thinking, and it's probably like a subject for another day, but I think it kind of correlates together. Is if you in a relationship and for whatever reason it's not working, and you feel like, oh, I'm gonna just go get somebody else, or you cheat on that person, would this be a way to prevent that? Like, this is the next option before that person go outside the relationship. Let me get a sex therapist. Maybe this might help me to better the situation with my significant other.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people are, you know, considering having an open relationship, and I can help them navigate that because that's messy. But I've had an open marriage for 20 years, so it doesn't have to be messy. It could work out. It could work out just fine. But there's a lot you got to talk about. Or porn addiction. You know, a lot of women will be like, yeah, my husband's addicted to porn. It's like, well, we can work on that, and that's something I can help with.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Because I feel like porn addiction, it's just as bad as cheating almost. You're going somewhere else to get your needs satisfied.
Yep.
But you're not having any emotional connection, and it's just like this disconnect, you know? So it's almost making it worse in your own relationship because you're getting used to being disconnected to sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,